Good morning. We want to welcome you to Paradise Church this morning. We have finally made it into May. I don't know about you, I feel like April was the longest month I've ever been in. And so we're glad to get to May. We're glad to hopefully turn the corner in our community and our culture. And so we look forward to everything that is good happening in the next few weeks. So we, again, want to welcome you to our service. And we are continuing this morning. Actually, we're closing out our service called He's Still Got the Whole World in His Hands. And so we want to invite you, if you have your Bibles, you can turn with us. You can actually get into Romans chapter 8. That's where we will be for most of the morning. I want to start this morning, and I've been in teacher mode, so I'm interested in doing a little bit of teaching this morning. And so, as every other teacher in this country, we've had to do online learning, and so I'm going to try my best to do a little bit of that this morning. And I want to start with a verse. I'm going to have put us up on the screen here, and I want to teach this to you. And it is hopefully a verse that you can keep with you and use throughout the week. Hopefully it'll be a source of inspiration and truth for you. But it comes out of Psalm chapter 33, verse 22. It says, "May your unfailing love be with us, Lord, even as we put our hope in you." So wherever you're at, if you're sitting at home, if you're in your car, if you're in your pajamas, hopefully you have clothing on, we're going to ask, wherever you're at, I want you to say this with me. I know it'll look weird, you can sort of look at your family that's sitting next to you at the breakfast table, but I want you to say this with me. So I want to count of three. 1, 2, 3. May your unfailing love be with us, Lord, even as we put our hope in you. One more time. May your unfailing love be with us, Lord, even as we put our hope in you. And so this morning I want to talk a little bit about probably one of the most difficult tensions in the world, and probably one of the most difficult tensions in your own life. It is something that we have to manage. It is something that we struggle with. But it's this very basic idea. How to remain hopeful in a hopelessly broken world. How to remain hopeful in a hopelessly broken world. And each one of us, we wrestle with this on some level. We wrestle with this dilemma. And if you've ever had something in your life that you have placed your hope in, and that eventually turns away or breaks down or disappoints you, you understand this. If you have ever stood at an altar and said vows and made a commitment and you said till death do us part, and the other person was basically saying, well, not till death do us part, until something else better comes along, you understand this tension. If you've ever had a job where you have poured your hope and your life and your time and your energy and all of your intellect into a company, thinking that you were a part of that company and that company really wasn't a part of you, and eventually they stepped away from you. Maybe you put your hope in the building or amassing of wealth. Maybe you have worked and saved and you did all the things you were supposed to. You read the Dave Ramsey books and you saved it all and you squirreled it all away. And you realized at the end that it really wasn't going to do what it was supposed to. Whether it was health. Maybe you spent your life, you ate the right things. You ate what your mom told you to eat. You didn't eat what your dad told you to eat. You did everything you were supposed to do, and you still got a phone call that said something that you did not want to hear. And so we have all had these experiences. And maybe you've had that moment in your life where you thought, why even try? Why even push forward? What is the use? What is the point? And if you've had that moment, then you understand this dilemma. And as we continue through this season, again, as I said at the beginning, we're so glad to be out of the month of April. It felt like it was 90 days long. But we are all struggling with this. And we're all asking these questions. And we, as people, as individuals, as a culture, we try desperately to find something that we can put our hope in. We'll put our hope in the most recent news report, and that's obviously always going to disappoint us. We put our hope in something that we're going to find on our phones or on the TV station. We put our hope in even just the changing of the calendar. It just felt extremely nice to be able to see May 1st, May 2nd, May 3rd on the calendar. But whatever it is that we put our hope in, we're trying to find something to stabilize us. Maybe by June 1st, maybe by the summer, maybe by the warm weather, maybe by whatever the situation is, that we have chosen to say, hey, this is something I'm going to put my hope in. Now, I have some definitions of hope that I wanted to work with this morning, and I've put them together from a number of different sources. But the definition that I want to work with this morning is the idea of hope, a person or a thing in which my expectations are centered. A person or a thing in which my expectations have been centered. And the person or thing in which you have placed your confidence in is related to your future. And most of us don't think about the idea of hope. We don't wake up and go, man, I feel so hopeful. I'm so full of hope. Most of the time when we are paying attention to the idea of hope, it is usually on the negative side, when we have slipped into hopelessness, when we feel a lack of hope, when we feel like there is no hope, when there is no future. But from the day we are born, we place our hope in something. We're not really conscious of it. We place our hope in the adults that are taking care of us. Our parents, our mother, our father. The people that raise us. And all we have to do is let out a little cry, and of course, everything that we need quickly or should be provided to us. And we continue with that idea as we grow older. And we basically, as the older we get, it's sort of like putting a ladder up against a wall. Every time you put a ladder up against a wall, it is a sign of hope. You are basing your safety on the fact that hopefully the physics are all working, that this wall will support us. You do that little thing, you try to dig the thing into the ground to make sure it's not going to move. It's all an act of hope. But in each of our lives, there are ladders that we lean against the things that we think are going to support us. We lean our ladder against the academics. We lean our ladder against athletics. We lean our ladder against relationships. We lean our ladder against that first job or that second job. We lean our ladder in all these different areas, thinking that this is all we need. And what happens as a result, though, is when those ladders fall apart, when those ladders let us down, we're not sure what to do. And this morning, as you would expect, I mean, I'm a minister, I'm a pastor, and you would expect, I mean, if you wanted to just sort of fast forward to the end of this, you kind of know where I'm going to go. That you should put your hope in God. That is a complete minister thing. You already know. That's exactly what I should be telling you. That you should not put your hope in these other things, but you should put your hope in God. And that's really what we're saying with this verse, is that we put our hope in a place that is secure. And it is not just to simply say, okay, that, this is the preacher thing. But there is a reality that is found in the Scriptures that we are told over and over again to put our hope in God, not just sort of as a piece of good advice, but it is because of the nature of the world that we live in. That the world around us is hopelessly broken. And if we put our hope in anything around us, anything that surrounds us, anything or person, it is going to disappoint us. And so when we get to the book of Romans chapter 8, one of the things that Paul tries to address with us is he tries to talk about the idea of sin. And we think about sin, one of the easiest ways we think about sin, some people don't even like to hear that word, it's sort of just a negative connotation. But we think about sin as sort of this one thing that we do. And I would get this question all the time, sort of the litmus test. Hey, is this a sin? Is that a sin? Is this a sin? And all they're really asking me is, hey, can I do this and get away with it? That's really what I'm trying to get my head around. But they're trying to talk about sin as a one-time event, as an item, as a thing. But the way that Paul describes it in the book of Romans is he describes it as an illness. He describes it as a plague, as something that is affecting everything. And we've all said the word virus in the last 2 months more times than we'll probably ever again in our lives. But it's really what it is. That he talks about sin as this thing that is not just an isolated act, but is something that affects the entire world. That Paul talks about sin as this fatal disease, and that once it was introduced into the world, infected and eventually killed everything. Now, everything with life dies. Have you ever noticed that? I mean, everything with life dies. And, I don't want to stay negative. I don't want to, hope he turns this thing around pretty quick. But that's sort of the reality. That I've seen, in my life, I have seen things that prove to me that everything is eventually going to have an end. It doesn't really matter how good it is. It doesn't matter how well it works. It eventually dies. We live in a world that is broken down. And so I want to start walking us through the book of Romans. And our very next verse is Romans 8:20. It says, "For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it." Okay? Now, Paul's a little hard to understand. I mean, I recognize it. I'm going to, hopefully, if you want to have a good start to your week, open up to the book of Romans, go to chapter 8, and just start reading. It is powerful. And it's not one of those things you can just sort of read through quickly. Paul has a tendency to say it in sometimes a confusing way. I recognize that. But what he says here is this idea, for the creation was subjected to futility. Another translation is frustration. The creation was subjected to frustration. And we know that as people. We know what that means, the idea of frustration. If you have ever been frustrated, okay? You've ever been frustrated at your kids. I can't get my kids to do this. I can't get my kids to change their mind. You ever been frustrated at your spouse? Oh my goodness, why do they keep doing this? If you've ever been frustrated at work, if you've ever been frustrated, that is what Paul is talking about. That we live in a world that is frustrating. And that frustration comes out of the situation that we find ourselves in with the idea of sin. Now, when Paul talks about it, he says sin was introduced into the world through one person, through Adam. And actually in chapter 8, he goes through this whole big long thing, and I don't have 2 hours to go through. If you ever want to just spend 2 hours with me talking through Romans chapter 8, that would be amazing. Okay? But I'm not sure anybody's really interested in that. But what Paul wants to say is that idea, once sin was introduced into the world by one person, it affected everything. And what comes as a result of that is a world that is breaking down, that it is falling apart. And the very fact, again, that we are frustrated on any level is a sign or a signal that allows us to see that. Anytime that we've been frustrated, the reason we are frustrated is because there's something in the back of our mind, there's something that we're pushing towards to say, it should not be like this. It should not be like this. And so the very idea that we have rolling around in our head is a sign of the fallen nature of the world that we live in. But he continues. The next part of the verse, with these two words, he continues with the words, in hope. In hope. That the creation itself will be liberated from the bondage to decay. And so what Paul is saying, he's saying in this chapter that everything, all of creation it's tied up. It is in bondage. It's in jail. And that's what causes us frustration. And that there is a point in the future, there is an existence where we will be liberated. All of creation will be liberated from that idea. And that frustration, this is why it just drives us nuts. The idea that the world will not cooperate with us. Things break, people misbehave, your children aren't interested in your plans for their lives, your parents won't fund your bad ideas. It's all extremely frustrating. And where I run into frustration as well is I do a number of funerals. And what normally happens at a funeral is there's sort of this conversation. There's this description of this person's life, whether it's a male or a female. They will sort of talk about how wonderful the person was. And they did so many amazing things. And this couple, they had this incredible marriage. They were married for 50 years and everything was great. They did everything that they were supposed to. They saved. They paid off everything. They kept their lawn meticulous. They did all the things that they were supposed to do. And then there's this sort of this weird turn in the conversation. This weird turn. It's just a shame. It's just a shame that they got sick. That all of a sudden one of them started breaking down. And all the things that they had sort of done and invested, it's all gone. On September 5th, 1997, Mother Teresa died. Now, that's a long time ago. It's sort of weird to sort of think about it. It just seems like not too long ago that news sort of came across. But in 1997, Mother Teresa died. And you think about that for a second. You think about what a wonderful person, all of the good work, all of the good things that she had ever done. She died. She wasn't able to beat it. She was not able to change the frustration. She was not able to go against this idea of creation. That if Mother Teresa herself could pass away, then we sort of know the end for us. And we think sort of foolishly, we think that there is something that we can do to fix it. And as we've sort of been watching this pandemic go through our culture, there's also been this incredible urge or push to tie all of this to politics. And wherever you're at on the political spectrum, you be on the one side where, hey, I like the way things are, I want to keep them the way they are. You may be on the side, no, we need change, we need change. The reality is both of those are going to break down. And if you have placed your hope in something happening that is going to change your life on an election day, you have placed your hope in the wrong place. Paul continues as we start going back through Romans 8:21. It says that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. Paul is saying that we will see the creation. That is what's going to happen when we get to heaven. That is what's going to happen as a result of what Jesus does. As one man brings sin into the world, there is one person, the one person that comes to bring us freedom in the person of Jesus Christ. He continues. Romans 8:22. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. That is the description of where we are. That is the description of what we are going through right now. All of creation is groaning. All of creation is going through this kind of pain and transformation. And the reality is this, there is nothing, and it would be amazing if all of a sudden somebody came up tomorrow and said, hey, we found a cure, we've run all the lab tests, all this is going to go away. I know, this is not the end of the story. This is not the key to eternity. This is not the thing that is going to solve all of our problems. In fact, the creation continues, and we stay in this place. Continuing, as Paul says in 8:24, for in this hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope, for who hopes for what he sees? And what Paul is saying, do not place, going back to that verse that we started with, out of Psalms, where we are simply saying, place your hope in God. Not placing your hope in anything that is going to decay, that is going to fall apart, that is eventually going to die. We continue, in verse 25 it says, but if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. What Paul is saying is that there is an idea of hope. There is an idea of hope that you can place in Jesus that will not fail. That it will not disappear. It will not die. Paul points out and says, anything that you can see is not anything that you should put your hope in. Anything that you can touch is not something that you should put your hope in. And this is hard. In this country, we have this idea. We recognize just how difficult this concept is. Because we do such a good job. In the United States, we do a very good job of building walls that will support us. We do a very good job of building things that we think will take care of it. But Paul's saying, no, don't put your hope in any of those things. What Paul wants to make sure that we understand is that, and he continues in Romans, he who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? If he did not hold back his son, should we give up hope that he cares? And the temptation for all of this, situation, is to look at all the things that are breaking down around us and be convinced of this idea that God does not care for us, that God does not love us. The world is breaking down, so that means God does not care for us. And what Paul wants to make us understand is this. It is not simply that. He's simply saying, I want you to move the ladder. Wherever you've placed the ladder, I want you to move it onto something that will not fail. An empty bank account, a loss of a job, the breaking down of a family. Those aren't anything that we should simply point to and say, well, that is proof that God does not love us. No, it is simply proof of where we have placed the ladder in the wrong place. So as Paul continues, and this is we get to the idea of the big finish. We skip down to verse 31. It says, what then shall we say to these things? What shall we say to these things? All these things that are breaking down for us, all these things that are falling apart for us, what shall we say to these things. If God is for us. It's almost sort of tongue-in-cheek because I can almost see Paul smiling as he writes this. He's probably struggling to write the word if. But he says it anyways. If God is for us, who can be against us? If God is for us, who can be against us? And so what Paul is saying is this. He's saying, don't just, don't sell everything, move to the woods, and just wait for the end of your life. Don't stop. You should still serve people. You should still love people. You should still try to work on your future. You should still try to build up your health and your retirement and all those things. But he's saying, don't put your hope in those things. Keep moving forward. Not with it, so I have to hold on to this so tightly. But holding on to something that is truly going to anchor us. He continues. He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also with him graciously give us all things? The God who does not spare his own son, but will continue to give us all things. And he continues. Skipping down to verse 38, he says, For I am sure that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, next one, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. And he wants to make sure, he takes that whole list to say one very clear idea. There's nothing that's going to separate us from God's love. And if you've placed your faith, if you've placed your anchor on any of these things, on heights and depths and rulers and all the things that we sort of live our lives by, no, none of those things are going to sustain us. We have been invited. What Paul is inviting us to, what Paul is describing for us, we have been invited to lean our ladders against God's love for us. We have been invited to lean onto something that is more secure. And so, what we do in the meantime is this, is we simply continue to live for the kingdom. When Jesus comes, he describes the idea of the kingdom, and it is something that is present now, but it's something that will obviously open us up into the future. And then we continue to live that life. We continue to dream. We continue to plan. We continue to do all the things that we can moving forward. But we understand that this is temporary. Everything around us is temporary. If I get a virus, that is temporary. If I live my life completely healthy, that is still temporary. Everything that I'm doing, everything that I'm experiencing is temporary. But God's love is eternal. God's love is eternal. And maybe what this season is doing for us is simply to loosen our hands around the plans that we have. To loosen our hands around the things that we own. To loosen our hands around the relationships that we think have to be fixed or put in the right way. And hold on to the eternal. The love that God provides for us through his son Jesus. Let's pray. God, we pray in this season that we would not lose hope. That we would instead move our foundation, move the ladder to a wall that will always hold us up. In this season, as we've been clearly shown, there is not a whole lot that is going to last forever. All of our plans, our finances, our world, our culture, our community, all these things will eventually pass away. But it is your love that we find ourselves and we anchor ourselves to this morning. And all this we pray in your name. of things real quick in terms of announcements. I guess our biggest announcement is next week we are going to have a drive-in service. Very similar to what we did for Easter. So if you were with us on Easter morning, we're going to have sort of that same format for Mother's Day. So it's going to be May 10th, next Sunday. It's going to be 11 o'clock. And we'll be out in the parking lot. And so if you want to come, you can be in your vehicles. We're going to have a no contact environment, so you can come in. Stay in your car. We'll give you a sealed communion in a bag that has all of your stuff for your bulletin and all that. But you can listen to us over the speakers. You can also listen to us over the radio as well. We'll be broadcasting and transmitting directly to your vehicle. If you're not near us, if you're wherever you're watching this, if you want to, you can obviously still turn into our live stream next Sunday, but it'll be at 11 o'clock, not at 10 o'clock. So just do keep that in mind. And we want to enter into a time of prayer, and so every Tuesday morning, our Bible study group, we lead everyone in a season of prayer. We try to keep prayer requests active. We try to pay attention to those. So if you have anything that you would want us to pray for, there's a couple of ways that you can contact us. The easiest way probably is to just send us an email. If you send that to info@paradisechurch.org, that will come right to me. There's also a spot on our website for you to submit a prayer request. You can mark that as private or public. If you want that to be shared with the whole prayer team, you can mark it as public. If not, you can mark it as private, and I'll be the only one that sees that. So just do keep those things in mind. If there's anything specifically we can keep you in prayer over, we want to be able to do that. But let's continue now with a word of prayer. God, we do thank you. We thank you for all that you have given to us. We thank you for being our hope that is eternal. God, we pray that you continually speak to us in this season. Allow us to see and to know that our hope should be in you. God, we thank you for all the opportunities that are opening up for us. That you've still called us to be in mission. You have still called us to be responsive and obedient to you. But we walk not with the expectation that we make our physical world better, but that we understand that you have provided for us a home in the future. God, we thank you for all this. We praise you and we ask you to guide us into this next week with your love and your mercy and your grace. Amen. hope to see you next Sunday if you're local for our drive-in service on Mother's Day. Have a good week. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.